Hello and welcome to drillingcontractor.org. I'm Kelly Ainsworth here at the 2016 IADC Contracts and Risk Assessment Conference in Houston. I'm here with Phil Eisenberg of Lockboard, who gave a presentation this morning on how companies can work with customers and vendors going through bankruptcy. How are you doing today, Phil?
I'm doing fine, Kelly. How are you?
I'm doing well. And how can companies make sure that they receive payment from a customer that's going through a bankruptcy?
One of the first things you have to decide is whether they're doing work under an existing agreement or whether the customer is coming to them anew during the bankruptcy to provide services, because the pre-petition contract is going to be an executory contract. The way you would ordinarily approach it if it was a new piece of business was you would either make sure that it was budgeted for, that you had an order from the court, and that you could make sure that they had the cash allocated and that you were going to have payment terms so that you were getting paid, and you would want the payment up front a little bit more than just all at the end. Normally, you would get an administrative expense claim in most of the bankruptcies if they don't have enough money in the ordinary course, especially if you're drilling a well, if you're a drilling contractor. So then you have to take into account the total viability of the company. You also would have lien rights if the well was productive. And then you would have whatever financial security you were able to arrange. Liens are financial security as well. So that would be the way to normally navigate with a company in bankruptcy.
And can you explain what you called the Twilight Zone of bankruptcy and how companies can navigate that?
Sure. The Twilight Zone, I didn't come up with that term. It was actually in a case called In Re Bildisco. It was a labor case where a labor union existed during a bankruptcy, and they had to stay in place during the bankruptcy and honor the agreements that they had, but at the end of the bankruptcy, the company was able to reject the labor agreement. So it's a very one-sided situation. And so as a service provider to a company in bankruptcy where you have an existing contract and you're already providing services, even if they haven't paid you, you can't take steps to collect because of the automatic stay. And so you're kind of stuck until the company assumes or rejects your contract. Now, there are tools under the bankruptcy code for asking for assumption or rejection early on. You can also ask for adequate protection in some instances. And so the Twilight Zone is something that's in favor of the debtors to help them to rehabilitate so that contractors can't just cut them off.
And what are some considerations that companies should keep in mind if they're doing work or providing services for another company that's in the process of filing for bankruptcy?
Right. So in the 90 days before bankruptcy, this is called the preference period. And so you would make sure that you were giving new value, that you demonstrated exactly what you were doing, and that you got paid on a regular basis. There are defenses to preference claims, and so you'll want to make sure that you've documented your deal. And if it's a big enough deal and it's an important enough deal with a company that's on the eve of bankruptcy, you'll want to consult legal counsel to structure the contract correctly. You also want to make sure that you're not getting disproportionate value from the company, which would be a fraudulent conveyance in addition to a preference. And so you'll want to make sure that you've documented the consideration back and forth in the market at the time, so you can avoid doing that. You've also want to make sure you have some security interest, and you want to make sure you stay current with them, which is the main thing. And usually, if it's important enough, they'll make sure and they'll work with you. And so that would be one of the big considerations for dealing with a company that's on the eve of bankruptcy.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Phil.
Oh, this has been my pleasure, Kelly. And this is cyclical. This will pass. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on drillingcontractor.org.